Well, thank you for inviting me to participate. I don't want to disrupt the flow of your discussion. I just wanted to say a few words, really just to indicate that, we as a department, me as an individual are very strongly interested in what we do and are following it. I mean, at a general level, I feel I have some responsibility to promote the whole idea of evidence-based decision-making. I mean, as it happens, I did my first degree in physical sciences and switched to social sciences. In both cases, the idea of doing things in a rigorous, logical way and testing it against evidence is the basis on which we operate. And although that sounds, in a way, a bit trite, it's remarkable how often you have to argue that case. I probably would not mention any names, but we recently had a highly controversial case of a very influential business person trying to tell us what is absolutely essential in one aspect of legislation, and we simply said, well, do you have any evidence? And the answer was no, but it's self-evident. And you can't make decisions like that. You have to have an evidence base in order to justify legislation or changes in the way we do things. And the social sciences provide that background. I mean, I personally, probably because of where I come from, attach enormous importance to having basic economic ideas in government, which are often just completely missing. You'd be amazed, those of you who've done economics, the extent to which in common discourse you encounter the so-called lump of labour fallacy. The idea that if a retired person stays on in work, by definition this must displace a younger worker, or if somebody comes from overseas, by definition this means one less job for everybody else. These kind of things are very much part of the popular argument. The neglect of opportunity cost. The idea that a lot of policy of government has a dead weight, again, is a kind of an economic idea that's often not part of policy-making discussion. So I think if the social sciences can contribute anything, it is introducing rigorous concepts and evidence. I had a quick read through the synopsis of some of the pieces of work that you've been doing, and some of them seem to be inherently extremely valuable. I haven't seen them followed through, but there was the work, for example, on different forms of employee participation systems and how this relates to foreign ownership, because actually what's happened in the UK is it's the foreign-owned firms, particularly the big manufacturing companies, who've driven good practice in British business, and learning from which are the best is highly productive. I saw another piece of work which relates to broad economic policy that somebody had done on undeclared work and understanding how important that is, how it works, and what you do about it. I mean, it's absolutely critical at the present because we have these horrendous levels of official unemployment in Spain and other countries, in Greece and other countries. And the question is, are these real? Do they mean anything? Or is undeclared work so vast that actually you have a fairly elastic labour market, as you do in many developing countries? Or is it small, in which case we should be terrified because there are revolutionary levels of unemployment. So I think understanding undeclared work and how you do that, it struck me as being an amazingly important subject. And another issue which I think one of you had tackled, Leeds, I think, Business School, which was the work on finance for growth, and the interesting conclusion that actually private equity probably contributed more to growth performance in SMEs than other traditional forms of financing. Quite an interesting conclusion, goes against the kind of fashionable wisdom, but quite relevant in terms of the work we're trying to do in this department, in terms of promoting non-bank finance. And then I thought there were a whole lot of other studies which I saw, which weren't directly related to government policy, but were quite important in terms of insights about the way business functions and where we can gather. I read the stuff, for example, on Tata's Innovation Forum. I mean, Tata is a brilliant company, a leading manufacturer now, and their practice is potentially highly influential in the rest of the country. 20, 30 years ago, it was the Japanese companies who sort of set the pace in terms of good innovation practice and good management. And tartar around adding that in terms of the latest generation. And then there was the work I saw done on lean production, which we hitherto thought of as being very much an issue for factories, and I think one of the business schools, I think it was Cardiff, had done some work on how you can apply that in HMRC, in universities, in local government, and get very, very big productivity improvements from applying that same basic idea. Something that hadn't occurred to me, which I saw that actually, in terms of SMEs, one of the big difference between survival and failure was the effective use of property and land assets. And if SMEs can be given good property management advice, this often makes all the difference in their performance. And then there was the work that was done, one of you in the room had done some very interesting work on extreme events. I was particularly interested in this because when I was at Shell, we used to devote quite a lot of time thinking about how you manage Exxon Valdez type disasters. Of course, BP have recently had deep water. But this is not just an issue for companies, it's an issue for governments, and the Stafford health disaster, for example, has massive consequences from the NHS, and it's how you handle these extreme events. If you can give us a handle on that, I think that's extremely important. And I think the last one, which was, I've also found very interesting, which was how you tailor business studies to SMEs. Because, you know, whenever I've done guest lecture courses in business schools, they've invariably been big companies sending their people off for a bit of topping up. But the people who can really make best use of it probably are SMEs, but they're too busy, apart from the cost. They're busy people, you know, it's a big hassle. So actually refining SME business training, which I think Goldman Sachs have taken on behalf of the researchers, you know, can be potentially very valuable. So I thought that, you know, although I haven't seen how you followed them through, I thought there was some really, really interesting stuff here and a massive contribution that the academic community, particularly business schools, can make to what we do. So I just sort of wanted to thank you for that, to register my personal interest and assurance that the department will be following this and making use of it.
Thank you very much, Vince. Are you prepared for Vince said he'd be prepared for questions in the next 10, 15 minutes. So, and could you please say who you are? Rick, where you're based?
Yeah, thanks. Rick Delbridge from Cardiff Business School. In various parts of the media and perhaps policy circles, business schools on the one hand have been accused of being, if not the architects, complicit in the global financial crisis, but elsewhere have been accused of not having any or sufficient influence. Where you sit on what appears to be a kind of contradiction in that regard, and how do you see the role of UK business schools contributing to the UK PLC agenda for financial and economic improvement?
I mean, your first point, I wouldn't blame business schools for it, but it is true that sort of the economics profession has got a lot to answer for in terms of the promotion of efficient market theory, which of course was not just wrong, but catastrophically wrong, and didn't factor in herd behaviour, massively distorted behaviour, which has caused all this havoc that's going on at the moment. So I mean, bad economics, as promoted over many years through economics faculties, including business schools, has indeed done a lot of harm. I mean, my excuse is I'm far too old to have been taught that stuff. I've never believed in it, but yes, I mean there are occasions when bad ideas are promulgated and do immense harm, and that's unfortunately one of them. But that's not particularly to put at the store of business schools. And business schools, it seems to me, do an extremely important function. I mean, it's important that managers, widely defined, do have the benefit of all the best insights you can provide. Good training in whatever aspect of company operations, whether it's financial management or marketing. It's best these things are done professionally. So it seems to me it has a major role.